Hello, everyone out there in podcast world. Hope you're having a wonderful day. You're listening to or watching Service Business Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Tersh Blissett, and my co-host sitting virtually next to me is Joshua Crouch. Many of you know, and if you haven't been on the show or you missed the last, 30 episodes, you may not know Josh, but Josh's new addition helped me out tremendously. He's a lifesaver. Come on the show and really help us out. But super thankful for Josh to be on the show. I don't tell Josh that enough. But that being said, I'm super excited about today's show. Stephen Christopher, for those who have listened to the show or watched the show for a while, know that Stephen, he's a great friend of mine. He's just a great dude in general. And he introduced Dan and I. And so I'm super excited to talk to Dan today we're going to talk about executive leadership. That's what Dan is, an executive leadership coach. But we're going to talk a little bit about leadership versus management. So are you a manager or a leader? And we're going to dive a little bit into a system he has created that kind of teaches you or shows you how to become a great leader with the 4 steps, a 4-step process. So with that being said, I'm super excited to have you on the show, and welcome to the show, Dan.
Thank you, Tersh. Thank you, Josh. I really appreciate that. Yeah. So people are probably wondering what's an executive leadership coach. And I always joke around because I'm an executive leadership coach only because I've spent the last 20 plus years in the trades and made most of the mistakes that I coach on nowadays. So it's, I stand up here pretty humble, and I appreciate y'all being on the show, or y'all inviting me to the show. And so what I coach on is called the 4 stages of leadership. And it's a leadership development system that people can take from today's show and start to apply it to their business moving forward to help develop the leaders around them. And really, nowadays you hear a lot about, leaders and followers, but you also hear this buzzword like leading leaders. And what does that look like? And today you're going to learn about what that looks like, because man, when you start leading leaders in your business, you really find yourself wondering, trying to find something to do, because they have it all going on. They're running your business and it's very successful. So I'm sure that may have a few people wanting to hear this podcast today.
Yeah. Well, that's our goal anyways. Yeah, definitely to have it so that we can step away and take the vacation that we all started our business to get rich sitting on a beach somewhere. So it would be nice to have that person being able to run the show while we're away. So I'm super excited to talk about that. Josh, what do you think?
I love this topic. As most of you guys know, I'm at least the ones that have listened recently. I'm not a handy guy. I was more in the operations side of things. So helping develop a team and develop the next generation of leaders is something that is always an ongoing challenge. We're not going to call it a struggle. We'll call it a challenge. But I think just talking to Dan pre-show, I think you guys are going to get some serious golden nuggets from some of the stuff that he goes through in his coaching program and some of the things that he looks for to help you develop the next set of leaders, because we all know the challenges here of not having enough people and not having enough qualified help. So you have to have some sort of system in place. And Dan is hopefully going to drop some gold on you guys today, so that way you can start getting to that next step.
Yeah. So Dan, will you start us off with what is Built for the Trades, and if somebody wants to learn something about Built for the Trades and they have to jump off the show early, I want to make sure that they get the information, where to go and all that stuff from you first.
Sure. Yeah. So Built for the Trades was built around really providing customized business growth and leadership development programs for trades businesses. So what I say is I always begin with the end in mind, and I really do. So when I start, whenever we start working with a client, the first thing we do is get their vision for the next 3 years. And then we start to work our way backwards through systems that help them to grow businesses that can run, that can operate without them being in the day-to-days. And the other thing we do is we have a mastermind community that's really built around experience. So it's built around doing business together. It's all home service business owners coming together, talking weekly, sharing secrets and sharing wins and losses in their business, because we all know that we have both. And when I say built around experiences, what makes Built for the Trades really different in the mastermind community is that we take our live events and we actually build them around going out and having an experience. Like, for instance, our last one was in Utah. We had a big, nice house, a private chef for a few days, and we went out and rode side by sides and just built relationships and had a good time up in the mountains of Utah. So I'm sure that's got a few people interested in having some fun like that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we were talking about before the show too. Is a lot. We go to these events and we're part of, peer-to-peer groups and coaching organizations and guidance organizations, implementation programs. And we go to the event, and some of the greatest conversations that you have, not taking anything away from the events at all, because they're great coaches. They have tons of experience and have tons of knowledge. Sometimes we fiend for that interaction with the other business owners, like, man, because you don't really have that relationship with other people, because it back home, unless it's someone who's a non-competing trade, you can have that relationship. But a lot of times the people who are experiencing the same things that you're experiencing are your competitors. And so it's like, oh, you have that conversation with them. But then like you go to a family reunion, and like Mike A talks about this and has mentioned this before. And I love this analogy. As you go to a family reunion and people will ask you, like, have conversation. You can't really just divulge what you're going through in life as a business owner or a manager, because they don't really understand it until they've experienced something similar to that. So it's awesome to have the mastermind group where you just go and spend time, like, just hanging out and networking and talking to each other. And like, man, can you believe this happened to me? Like, and then someone else is like, oh yeah, that happened to me 2 years ago. This is what I did, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I never would have thought of that. And it's crazy how much those collab sessions happen. Like, there was a group of like 10 or 12 of us that all met up across the country at one of our friends' plumbing and HVAC company in St. Louis. And we got to the hotel. We all flew in. We got to the hotel like at, I don't know, 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. We were all going to meet up at Todd's location the next morning and hang out there for the better part of the day and then go eat that night. Well, 3 o'clock in the morning, we're still sitting in the hotel lobby. All of us are just hanging out and just chatting. And like, even though we meet every Friday, like virtually, just being there in person together was like, oh, it was a game changer. That week we learned, I know personally, I learned so much information just based off these other companies that have experienced stuff like that. And nothing was scripted at all. It was literally, oh yeah, well, what about this situation? So, I mean, I love that you're taking the ball and running with that, because that's something that our industry needs dearly.
Yeah, it's called a unplugged retreat, and it's really, the vision is that we all come together and then we leave our phones turned off. So imagine that, bringing together business owners and then telling them to turn their phones off. It takes a day or so. Sometimes they're tweaking a little bit, wondering where their phones are at. But it's amazing, because you come back from an event like that and you just feel refreshed and you feel energized, ready to take on your business again. So it's a lot of fun. And I think life is all about having experience anyways, right? So
absolutely. Do you ever have a owner come back from that retreat and be like, man, I turned my phone off for 4 days and then I turned it back on, and like now it's 6 weeks to catch back up with all the emails?
Truthfully, the only rule is no phones in the common area. So I think they sneak back to their rooms sometimes and turn them on. You know how it is. It's hard to keep them away completely. But yeah, our next retreat's coming up in January. We're going to be in Winter Park, Colorado, doing some snowmobiling, having a good time. So if anybody wants to check that out and learn more about it, just reach out to me and I'll share.
Oh, that'd be awesome, Steven. If you're listening to this still, We're gonna have to meet up there and hang out.
That's right in his backyard.
Yeah, that's right in his backyard. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Cool, man. Well, will you kind of go into a little detail? Like, let's just jump right in, feet first. And like, what's the difference between leadership and management? Because I know we're going to talk about so often, Josh can share a little bit. I can share from personal experience, having that lead service technician, like you need a service manager. And like we all, like we see it constantly. And as a service technician, it's almost like that's our holy grail when we get hired. Like, what's your end goal? Oh, I want to be a service manager. I want to be an install manager. But in my opinion, they take two different paths. Like, obviously you need somebody who has skilled trade knowledge, but to have someone who has that knowledge and a business background, a leadership background, is going to be far more valuable than someone who is generating me a ton of money that I'm now going to lose the revenue coming out of the field. So kind of walk us through that thought process that you have with that.
Yeah. And one thing I heard you say, Terrence, was that they need knowledge in the trades or in that skill set. And I really want to debunk that because I personally have had experience, with success in bringing somebody up with operational experience, not necessarily trades experience, and being successful in a service manager role. It just takes a little more time. And in that case, you do have to have a lead technician who can help answer a lot of the questions that come in. But the difference between leadership and management is it's very simple. Leadership is influence. And John Maxwell is one of my mentors. I'm actually a John Maxwell certified coach. And one of his quotes is, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And it's so true, because the difference between leadership and management is accountability. And a lot of times when people are moved into, let's just call it leadership roles, because that's the buzzword nowadays. 10 or 15 years ago, everybody was using management. Now everybody's using the word leadership. When people are moved into that role, they're either on one end of the spectrum or the other. And one end is they're naturally great leaders because they're people pleasers by nature. They want to get along with people, build relationships, but those people have a hard time holding people accountable. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who we would call hard asses or whatever. They hold people accountable. They say what they want to say. They just they're very blunt, and those people have a hard time building relationships because that's a slow process, and they're on the right now train. And so it's interesting when you think about those two different personalities. The people who are usually on the right now train have that sense of urgency. They're ready to go, but they find themselves with a lot of just followers, people who are asking them 1,000 questions. What do I do next? And it's really annoying because you're like, why does my phone ring 100 times a day? Why do I have to keep answering all these silly questions? And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who are pretty easygoing and sometimes lack a sense of urgency. And you're wondering, as the visionary in the company, like, why is that person not just going along a little quicker? Well, you've picked that personality, and really, once you know who's leading your company or who is that next leader in line, and you know their personalities, you can start to coach them towards adjusting that a little bit. And what I say, it's like if you're thinking about the DISC personality assessment, it's either that high D or that low D. And the high D is the ones that are very urgent in your face. The low D are the ones that are very easygoing, people-pleasing type personalities. I always say they need to either need to adjust up towards the middle or down towards the middle to be a great leader, because you have to be able to know when you're wearing your relationship building hat and know when you're wearing your management hat, which is that accountability that you need.
Yeah, I love that. And we did not talk about this beforehand. And you hit the nail on the head, because about 2014, 15 ish, whenever I started my other HVAC company, I was getting like 100 to 130 phone calls a day. And it was like, you hit the nail on the head. Like, I'm getting tons of phone calls. I have people that are just calling me for help. And I heard somebody, I want to say it was Dave Ramsey or either Donald Miller's podcast. And they talked about limiting the expectations of people and making them think before calling you. And so then I kind of put my twist on it. And from that day forward, every time they called me, they had to call me with 3 solutions with every problem that they had. And so they'd call me and I'd say, okay, well, what's your 3 solutions on the problem or the issue that you have? And they're like, oh, well, I don't know. I haven't even got on the roof yet. Like, click, hang up. And they're like, not even say a word, just click, hang up. And then they call me back. I think we got disconnected. Yeah, we did. Call me back with your 3 solutions, click. And then after, like, literally, it was like a faucet. 2 days later, I went down to like 4 calls a day. And I'm like, sitting at the desk, I was like, what do I do with my life now?
Do I still have my employees? Do they still work for me?
On my desktop phone, I'm like, did my phone break? But yeah, it was totally exactly like you say there. And that was a huge aha moment for me, that I really had to work away from being that type of person.
Yeah, that's really cool, Tersh. I mean, a term I use a lot in my coaching is like, are you playing offense or are you playing defense? And I think, when you're facing a problem, coming with solutions and a positive mindset is playing offense. Coming with the problems and I'm the victim, you're playing defense. And a lot of times that's naturally, as humans, just look at the world we're living in today. Everybody's a victim. But to be a great leader and to be thinking, you have to turn that mindset and keep that positive mindset, but be playing offense every day, because things are going to be thrown at you. You're going to have difficulties that you run across, but it's how you approach it with that mindset that's really going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And how you lead.
Huge. Okay. So we kind of go into a little bit of detail about it, but we'll pin that for just a second. Okay. Can you tell us the 4 stages of leadership? Like, what made you come up with this process and this system in general? And then kind of, can you tell us what it is and stuff?
As far as what made me come up with this process, it's a lot of reading leadership books and a lot of trial and error in my own home service business. And, it started off probably as more than 4 stages, but I'm a guy who likes simple things. So I try to make it as simple as possible. And so the 4 stages are this: it's position, it's stage 1, stage 2 is relationship, stage 3 is production, and stage 4 is reproduction. And the way I teach it, it's just a cycle that keeps going round and round. So for instance, for people out there listening, it's like, if I meet somebody for the first time, they know me as Dan, the executive leadership coach, and it's very positional. They don't know anything about my history. There's no credibility built. I haven't shown them my that I'm a producer and what I do as a leadership coach. None of that has taken place. And so if I just go straight from the introduction to trying to teach somebody or train somebody or coach somebody on something, it's not going to be as effective, because I've lacked building that relationship with that person. And so I coach through that. And what I tell my clients is, the 4 stages can be done in one conversation, or it can be done, and it's really done in one conversation a lot of times, but it's also done in a lifetime relationship with people. Because if I meet somebody for the first time and I go to onboarding that person, and so I go from stage 1 introduction all the way to stage 4, and I start training that person in a new position, I can never leave stage 2 behind. At some point in the next few days, I need to make sure that I build a relationship with that person. Because if I just take that person and put them out in the field or put them in the office, and I've lacked building any relationship with them, they're going to see me as a very positional business owner or a very positional manager. And they're going to be doing things just because I tell them to do things. And so
how would you do once you have, I don't know, like 100 employees, and like there's people walking around that you're like, I've never seen that guy before. Like, he's got my uniform on. Is he supposed to be here?
That's a great question. Yeah. So when you have 100 employees, you really have to reproduce this knowledge in every one of your managers or leaders in your business. And as the owner visionary of your company, you have to be intentional about walking around and just, you're probably not going to be able to build deeper relationships, but you can build casual relationships, just being present with people. But the answer to your question is that their direct managers need to be in charge of running the 4 stages of the leadership, because that's the person that's going to be leading them through their journey in your business.
Gotcha.
So it's a scale model.
That, because most businesses don't have 100 people yet, and if they are, they should probably be teaching us something. So with your business, let's say they have anywhere from 1 to 10 field employees, because that's probably where I'm assuming most home service businesses are. What types of things should they be looking for in their current field employees or current employees in general, even in the office? And also, what should they be looking for in future interviews that they're having for people that could fill these roles at some point?
Yeah. So once again, I keep it very foundational and very basic. So positive mindset's huge. If you have somebody who's consistently the negative, I call it like the negative Nancy in the group, always bringing people down, that's not going to be the person you want to put in a leadership role, because the way you got to picture it is a person leading that department or the person leading your company. Every level below that is just a trickle down of that person. And so I'm looking for people who are naturally taking initiative. I'm looking for people who are promoting teamwork. I'm looking for people who are organized, on time, prepared. I'm looking for somebody who is taking ownership of their outcomes, just like Tersh said earlier, somebody who is actually bringing solutions to the table. Like, wow, like that would blow you away if you had that person working for you. So it's not, you're not looking for the top salesperson all the time. Though you want to find somebody who is a producer, that doesn't mean they have to be your top salesperson. Producing is not just about sales, so that is a piece of it. Producing is about who you are as a person. And if you find somebody who's growing outside of what they do day to day, like you hop in a truck, one of your technicians, and he's listening to a leadership podcast. Okay, this guy, I'd be kind of like, this guy's got something going on, because he's wanting more. So
yeah,
how many people are they're gonna realize now they're gonna have a leadership podcast as soon as their manager jumps in the truck with them.
They're
gonna have it queued up.
Do it.
Like, oh yeah, he's coming. Here he comes. Quick. No, it's how do you avoid the obviously the negative Nancy's? We want to avoid that. But the opposite side of the spectrum, the person who's overly optimistic about everything. You're like, all right, reality check here. Like, we're not going to do 10 million the first year. You just started this position. You know what I mean? So is there a point to where you see that that is bad as well? Or can, like, we have several people that Josh and I know together, and one of the go-to things is they'd rather reel in a stallion than kick a mule. And maybe that's the mindset that you approach with that.
Yeah. I mean, so are you talking about with
just whenever you're picking out that person that, because I heard you say that, you're trying to avoid the people who are going to be negative, or they're going to suck the air out of the room. And some people might call themselves a realist if they act that way. Like, all right, I'm not being negative, I'm just being real. And so, like, but at the same time, if you constantly are feeling that every time you have a conversation, then it's like, oh man, I just do not want to be around this person anymore.
Yeah, I mean, remember, leadership is influence. And so if you decide to put that person in a leadership role, they're going to influence everybody else in that direction. And so the answer is just sitting down one with that person and educating them on that influential factor, and seeing if they even care about that. Because some people just don't care, and they'll be like, you know what, that's just me, I don't care what you think. Then that's not going to be the next leader in line for your business, unless you want to have that negativity floating through your culture. And that's why I always say, like, even when you're thinking about your culture and what that looks like, it's good to have a good set of core values established for your business, and you hold people accountable to it, because ultimately those core values, as you, the business owner, plus accountability, is going to equal your culture. And a lot of times, they may or may not have core values on their wall for their business, but the accountability piece lacks. And I guarantee you, nobody's core value is negativity. So, which I would hope not, but
right.
Hopefully that answers. And going back to that analogy of like the racehorse and the plow horse, the racehorses are typically your top selling people. They like the autonomy and the freedom of doing their own thing. They like to kind of make their own schedule. They like to only worry about themselves and the customer they're standing in front of. That person right there, you'd have to really educate on that. Being a leader is not a glamorous thing. Yes, you might have a title of service manager, but the reality is now you're dealing with all the technicians plus the apprentices coming up. You're dealing with all the angry customers. You're getting less pay more than likely. You're working long hours. You're doing all these things that person, after they get educated towards what that looks like, may be like, I don't want any of that. And so it's good as a business owner.
Anyone wants to be a service manager anymore.
So the other end of the spectrum is, there may be a person whose body's given out on them, right? In the trades, that's pretty common. Or they may see that, hey, one day they want to own their own business, or one day they want to be the general manager. They want to work in the office more than they work in the field. There's a lot of, there's pros and cons both ways you look at it. But going into it with the right expectations is important, because it's not about you. It's about everybody else around you once you start leading other people.
That's a great point. Now, and I know we talked about this pre-show. You have like 10 questions that you go through when it comes to make sure I understand this right. 10 questions that you, as far as developing that next leader, is that what I understood?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So
do you want to go into that like a short dive, and then people can reach out to you a little more in detail if they want to go in deeper with this?
Yeah, I definitely can. So, whenever you're sitting around looking at all the team members you have in your business and you're wondering, do I have a service manager, or do I have an office manager, somebody who's showing potential to be the next leader in line? A couple questions I ask myself is do I have anybody in my business who's influencing my culture in a positive light? Like people, like, you don't want that person who's just always optimistic no matter what, and they never are fazed by it. But you do want somebody who's showing up and being optimistic more times than they're not. And the other part is, like I said earlier, is like, is there anybody in the business who's growing themselves outside of just coming in the day-to-day operations and what they're currently doing? So those are a couple of things I look for.
So somebody that doesn't punch in and punch out, and then they don't care about the rest of the business.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have people punching in and punching out, it's definitely something to do with your culture and the leadership in your culture. I call those just enough employees, and we see that a lot in the government, where people are just there, they're grumpy, they're punching in, they're punching out, and nobody wants to have that in their business. And we want people who are engaged, who know where the company's going, what does the vision look like, and how do they play a role in that vision. And that's really what I help companies establish. And so it's just little things, seeing people who are taking initiative, seeing people who are organized naturally. I'm not going to want anybody who's like super egotistical, but having a little ego is good. We want somebody who's confident, right? Confident and humble at the same time. And then if you have somebody who says, hey, look, I take complete ownership of this mistake, I'm going to make it right. Like, mind blown, right? Like, who does that? Everybody's typically like, it's
where's
not
the
my fault.
emoji?
The customer did this. My helper left the tool on the job. All these different excuses that we hear from followers out there. And I'm not picking on anybody, because that was me at one point. I grew up as a service technician and to running my own, and then follow that up into running my own business. But so I've been in all the different roles, and I understand the growth that it takes to get to where you want to go in that leadership role. And going back to like the 4 stages of the leadership, that position, stage 1, the one thing I'll say to all business owners and managers out there is, you have to give clarity in writing of what's expected of that person that you're leading. That's one of the biggest mistakes, is we're so vague. And
well,
so,
if you doing a brand new position, how do you know what you expect from someone?
You write you'll sit down and write a position agreement.
Yeah. So like, that's the thing that I feel like, I experienced it myself, and then I've heard people ask this constantly, and it's, I don't have that job role built out. I do it personally, or, so and so does it, and they're overloaded and they're dropping the ball on all this stuff. So I feel like I should hire for this position. Maybe it's an install coordinator, where our install manager was doing it, but now they're overloaded. But I don't know how to tell this person what they're supposed to be doing, because I don't really know. Like, what advice would you give to somebody that asked that particular question?
Well, I mean, a couple of things we could do here. So the first thing is they could log, what they're doing while they're doing that task. We can get a better understanding what that looks like. The second thing is that never skip the position agreement. Once again, right, we are creating leaders that lead leaders, and you can't lead your own life if you don't know what's expected of you. So if you want to continuously lead followers, then go ahead and just ignore what I said and skip writing any kind of position agreement, and just put them in that role and say, hey, go out and just be the best leader you can be. Go out and manage this team like a rock star. And then they go out there, and next thing you know, they're talking to me a few months later, and they're like, man, I don't know why that guy can't be a better service manager. I mean, I gave him a pay raise, and I gave him his own pickup truck and told him to go out there and help these technicians earn their KPIs. And, but they never really set a good foundation, and position agreements do that well. And what I always tell people is, like, once you write it and you sit down with that person and you go through it, you're going to have to go through it a few more times, especially in the first 90 days. You really need to revisit that, because when it comes to holding people accountable, the one thing I'll say is you got to take all the feelings out of holding people accountable. Like, leadership is influence, leadership is feelings, but management is accountability. And that's why you have systems in your business like position agreements. That's why you have systems in your business like core values. Because you want to lean back on something besides my feelings. You want to say, hey, look, here's what you signed. Here's what you agreed upon when you came to work at this company. And here's what I'm going to hold you accountable to.
Yeah. Now, you said that never skip the position agreement. Are you just saying for, like, quote unquote management positions, or like every position in the business? Every position in the business. Okay, so you could do you believe in the philosophy of leading from the bottom up also? Like if someone, like, no matter where you are in the company, you can be a leader. Oh, 100%. Yeah, leadership is influence. So we all have it, right? We all have it. We all finish the training session with our technicians, and then the next thing you know, they're out by the truck smoking a cigarette, and you got one ring leader who's influencing everybody, saying, oh, that was BS. You shouldn't listen to that. And, oh yeah, you should be out there doing it like this. And so once again, that's why it's your core values plus accountability equals your culture. If you allow that to go on, that person is undermining everything that you're trying to accomplish in your business. And so we're all, I mean, it's, like I said, it's all about influence, and it's all about who you have in that culture and what you're allowing. And so the long answer to that is yes. You can lead in any position, because leadership is not a position title at all. Cool, bud. If people want to get more information about you, Built for the Trades, like any of that stuff, where should they go? So definitely, builtforthetrades.com is my website. They can follow me at Facebook at Built for the Trades, or Instagram at Built for the Trades. Also find me on LinkedIn, Dan Dowdy there. And, I'd love to share more. Really, like I said, all this stuff comes from my past experiences, but I've also used it and continue to use it in the trades, and it makes a huge difference. Cool. And where do we sign up for this trip in January? I'm glad you asked. It's all Paul's already said he's in. So he wants to see Tall Paul on some skis, is what he said earlier.
Paul, you have to pay for this one.
Yeah, so just hop on the Built for Trades website and check out our mastermind community. We do mastermind groups for business owners and managers. And if you're interested in learning more, just reach out to me, Dan at builtforthetrades.com. And I'll allow anybody to come on and check out the mastermind group one time, no charge. Just kind of come on and see what it's all about. But once again, it's like if somebody who's never really been in a coaching space before, never really been in a mastermind group, I always recommend coming into the mastermind community first, because you're going to find peers that you can really relate to, because it's other other people just like you who own or manage home service businesses. And it's a great place to be because it's a whole mindset of like, you're the sum of the 5 people you hang around.
Very true.
So who are you going to hang around? And so if you have 10 or 15 people in a group that you're hanging around every week, imagine what that looks like.
Yeah, especially if like you have successful people or people who are motivated and because it is very true. You are the 5 people that you hang around. So if you're around Debbie Downers all the time, no matter how much of a pick-me-up person you are, you're going to become that person. And the challenge that I have with this is that I tend to surround myself with all these uber successful people.
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, oh, what do I have to offer for, these groups? Because like I am
That means
way,
you're in the right group.
they're way up here. And so, yeah, I feel guilty from time to time for that, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's normal. That's normal for everybody. But the reality is everybody has something to teach us. It's just a matter, are we willing to listen? And then as far as that point of view is, you just got to be willing to share, because no matter where you're at in life, there's an experience that you've had that I guarantee that other person hasn't had. Sure. Or you have a different perspective based on your past experiences. And so it's always good. Don't shy away from checking it out just because of where you're at in your business. Or where you're at in your career, because it's really good to dive in and get out of your comfort zone, for sure.
100%. Dan, I appreciate it. I thank you so much for coming on the show. Josh, do you have any closing remarks or questions before I wrap things up?
Yeah, I would highly encourage you guys that are, because we see it in the groups all the time, these other Facebook groups where people are trying to develop a leader or figure out who they should do this with, or maybe they should promote this person, or what does this look like? It's you guys see these things and listen to these on podcasts, but take that first step, jump into Dan's mastermind group and see what it's about. The first step is always the hardest. If you take that first step and you jump into that, you're going to be opened up to a whole new world of things that you didn't even realize was possible. And then you can start down the journey of really getting your business in line, growing your business, and getting to the point where you're not the guy for everything or the gal for everything. So highly encourage you to check out Dan's mastermind group. And if you have someone that, if you're trying to figure out who the next leader in your business is, reach out to them and see what you can learn about those questions, so you can ask yourself those questions about the people in your business.
It's good stuff. Yeah, thank y'all for having me on the podcast. And you'll see that this 4 stages of leadership, as you dive more into it, it's a great sales system too, right? Because it's all about communication. It's all about leading. It's all about building those relationships, both with the team around you and your clients. So thank y'all again for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. Thank you again.
Thanks for coming on, Dan.
Yeah. And thank you, Stephen, too, for making the introduction. We wouldn't have this conversation without that fella. But yeah, if anybody has any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. We'll have all of our contact information in the show notes. And with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful and safe week until we talk again next time on the Service Business Mastery Podcast. This is a podcast focused on service business owners, managers, and technicians who are considering becoming business owners as well. We hope and our target is to help answer the unasked questions. And so I hope that we did that in today's show. Until we talk to you next time. See you later. See you.
All right. Thanks.